Arthur Davies, a man of quiet routine, lived in a house with a peculiar secret. Each night, precisely at the stroke of midnight, it vanished. He would wake to the gentle rocking, the faint humming of a journey unknown. By the time dawn painted the sky, he'd be somewhere new. Never the same place twice. It was unsettling, yet strangely exhilarating. Arthur grew accustomed to the unexpected. He learned to find charm in the unpredictable. Waking up beside the shimmering Seine or with a view of the majestic Alps became his bizarre norm. He documented each location meticulously in a worn, leather-bound journal, a catalogue of the extraordinary. But Arthur was not afraid. He felt a strange sense of safety within the walls of his peculiar, peripatetic home, as if the house itself was protecting him from something. From what, he couldn't say. One morning he awoke to the scent of salt and the sound of crashing waves. His cottage perched precariously on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic. Another day, he found himself nestled amidst the bustling marketplace of Marrakesh, the air thick with the aroma of spices and the sound of bartering. He sipped mint tea, watching the vibrant tapestry of life unfold before him. He spent a glorious week in a secluded Japanese garden, the air perfumed with cherry blossoms. The silence was broken only by the gentle rustling of leaves and the distant murmur of a waterfall. He sat on the veranda, sipping green tea, contemplating the mysteries of the universe. Then there was the time he found himself in the middle of Times Square, surrounded by towering skyscrapers and dazzling lights. The cacophony of the city was overwhelming, yet strangely exhilarating. He ate a hot dog from a street vendor, feeling a strange sense of belonging in the heart of the urban jungle. One night, the familiar hum and sway that lulled Arthur to sleep was absent. He slept soundly, unaware of the stillness. He awoke to the chirping of birds and brilliant sunshine streaming through his window. The view, however, was not the comforting familiarity of his usual awakening. It was a street he didn't recognize. Rows of identical houses stretched out on either side, bathed in the warm glow of the morning sun. The air was still, the silence heavy with an unspoken threat. Arthur felt a knot of unease tighten in his stomach. Where was he? And why hadn't his house returned him home? He stepped outside, the pavement solid beneath his feet. He looked up and down the street, but there was no sign of life. The houses stood silent, their windows dark and vacant. The only sound was the beating of his own heart. Where was everyone, and where on earth was he? Arthur spent the day exploring the deserted neighbourhood, a chill creeping into his bones despite the warmth of the sun. He tried knocking on doors, hoping to find someone, anyone who could explain where he was, but each house stood empty, echoing with an unsettling silence. It was as if the entire population had simply vanished. Days bled into weeks, the silence becoming a constant companion. Arthur continued his search, his hope dwindling with each passing hour. He scoured libraries, his fingers tracing dusty spines, searching for any mention of a town where houses vanished and reappeared. He found nothing. He placed ads in local newspapers, hoping someone might recognize his predicament. He described his unusual house, its nightly journeys, and the unsettling silence that greeted him on that fateful morning. But the only responses he received were from cranks and charlatans, offering false hope and useless advice. Section 5. Whispers on the Wind. One blustery afternoon, while sitting on a park bench, a crumpled flyer caught his eye. It depicted a woman with piercing blue eyes and an enigmatic smile, advertising her services as a finder of lost things. Below, in swirling script, were the words, "Mrs. Cavendish, discreet and effective solutions." He found her in a dimly lit antique shop, surrounded by forgotten treasures and the scent of lavender polish. She listened intently, her piercing blue eyes never leaving his face, as he recounted his tale. When he finished, she smiled, a knowing glint in her eyes. "Mr. Davies," she said, her voice husky with age, "yours is a most intriguing dilemma." He waited, holding his breath. as she took a long drag from a cigarette holder that seemed to have materialized from thin air. Exhaling a plume of smoke, she finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "There are forces at play here, Mr. Davies, forces beyond your comprehension." Section 6. The alluring Mrs. Cavendish. Mrs. Cavendish spoke of quantum entanglement, of parallel universes, of realities intertwined. Her words were like riddles swirling around him, leaving him with more questions than answers. She spoke of a cosmic dance, a delicate balance that had been disrupted, and of a key, a catalyst that held the power to set things right. But the key, she explained, was not an object but a person, she hinted, who had been taken from him. "Find her, Mr. Davies," she urged, her voice filled with a strange urgency. "Find her, and you will find your way home." But who was this woman? And what did she have to do with his predicament? Arthur left the shop with more questions than answers, his mind spinning with Mrs. Cavendish's cryptic pronouncements. He clutched the worn photograph she had given him, the image of a woman he had never met before, yet whose familiar gaze stirred something deep within him. He had to find her. He had to find out why his house had stopped moving. Section 7. A trail of breadcrumbs. The photograph became his compass, guiding him through a labyrinth of cryptic clues and dead ends. He followed a trail of breadcrumbs, each one leading him closer to the truth, yet further down the rabbit hole of the unknown. He consulted ancient texts, deciphered cryptic symbols, and navigated the shadowy underbelly of the city, each step fraught with danger and uncertainty. He met with scholars and mystics, each encounter adding a piece to the puzzle, but never revealing the complete picture. He was like a man possessed, driven by an insatiable need to understand, to find his way back to the familiar rhythm of his shifting abode. The world, it seemed, was full of secrets, and he was determined to unlock them all. One rainy afternoon, while huddled in a dusty bookshop, he stumbled upon an ancient tome hidden amongst forgotten first editions. Its pages, brittle with age, held the key to his mystery, revealing the existence of a secret society dedicated to safeguarding the delicate balance between realities. And at its heart, a prophecy. When the house ceases its dance, the weaver shall unravel the threads of time. Could he be the weaver, and if so, what was he meant to weave? Section 8. The Quantum Conundrum. Armed with this newfound knowledge, Arthur realized that his unique situation was no accident. His house, he now understood, was not merely travelling through space, but through time and dimensions, keeping him hidden, protected. But from what? And for how long? He had to find the woman in the photograph. Mrs. Cavendish had hinted that she was the key to restoring balance, but how? Were they connected in some way he couldn't comprehend? His mind reeled with possibilities, each more bizarre and unsettling than the last. He felt like a pawn in a cosmic game, his fate hanging in the balance. He remembered something Mrs. Cavendish had said. "Time is not a river, Mr. Davies, but a vast ocean with currents and eddies that can carry you to unexpected shores." Had he been swept away by one such current? And if so, how could he navigate back to his own reality? Section 9. A New Dawn, a Distant Horizon. As the sun rose, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Arthur stood on a hilltop, the wind whipping at his clothes. He looked out at the world before him, a world that seemed both familiar and strange. He still hadn't found the woman in the photograph, and his house remained lost in the labyrinth of time and dimensions. But something had shifted within him. He was no longer the same man who had once sought comfort in routine. He had looked into the abyss, and the abyss had looked back. And in that exchange he had found a new kind of strength, a strength born of resilience, of curiosity, of a willingness to embrace the unknown. He took a deep breath, filling his lungs with the crisp morning air. He didn't know what the future held, but he was no longer afraid. He would continue his search, following the threads of fate wherever they might lead, for he knew now that the journey was just as important as the destination. And somewhere out there, in the vast expanse of time and space, his shifting abode awaited his return.